Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Kalen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Hi, Sam.
Hey, Kalen. Whoa,
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to it. Nice to see you today.
Yeah, good to see you too. How was your week?
Wow. My week was actually really marvelous. Thanks.
Was it?
Yeah, it was really great.
What was the highlight?
Highlight was, well, I think the highlight for me was seeing Mark Ingalls.
Oh.
Yeah.
Excellent.
It's been a long time since I've seen him, and there was a lot of water under that bridge, and we mopped it up. It was wonderful. Great experience seeing him.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, really
fantastic.
good. And it was really nice. And this weekend I went on 8K walks. So I got 16K in with my dog through trails this
my
weekend,
goodness.
which felt wonderful. I left early in the morning, did a real power walking 8Ks each morning, and it felt wonderful.
Good.
Yeah. How about
Good
you?
for
How was your week?
It was
really
good. Yeah, everything was good. Kind of feel like I've made some good business decisions to start moving in certain directions. And yeah, it's just, for me, getting, the summer's, kind of a slow time for me because I'm away a lot and doing more recreational type stuff. But getting into the end of the summer, beginning of September is sort of like go time. So
yeah, it feels like September. Well, September is right around the corner. And I don't know about you, but July, August are my slow months.
Right.
And because we're not tourist dependent.
Yeah,
really.
that's
right. And so I'm gearing up for September, trying to regain my energy and just prepare for the busy times because it's coming.
Game face on.
Exactly. I feel like I've got it.
I love it.
Yeah.
And then
really good.
I had a great weekend with family. My in-laws are in town, and it was my stepdaughter's birthday. So we had.
How old is she?
She is 24. Yeah.
Right on.
So, yeah, it was just good. And, it's Monday, and we've got our podcast, and we've got two amazing guests on that we've been trying to get on for a long time. Brianna Stewart from the Fed, Food Eco District, and Jill Doucette from Synergy is with us, and we're going to have a chat with them about everything from composting, urban agriculture, greening business, and all those things. So,
yeah, well, I know that that Jill's been part of my business, if she knows it or not, for a long time now, going through every year and getting my check marks and getting not qualified, what's the word?
Certified or
Thank you.
re-established?
Recertified.
Confirmed?
Yeah, happy to say I'm green and thinking about carbon neutral, just like you.
Yeah, well, and I met Jill a long, long time ago, right when we were starting Big Wheel, and she was starting her business then as well, and I believe, and yeah, just she helped us become green, and just from an idea, like, could we be carbon neutral, and had no idea, and so we were introduced, and yeah, it's been a great partnership, and from that, Jill and I were founding directors of the Food Eco District as well, going back, and now the organization is still, I think, probably 7 or 8 years now, and we've got Brianna Stewart that's heading it up. So let's introduce them. Hi, Jill. Hi, Brianna.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. Morning. Great to be here.
Great. Why don't we start with Brianna? Brianna, why don't you just give a bit of a background on what you do and who you are and all those things?
You got it. So I head up Fed, or Food Eco District, as Kalen has said. So I'm the program manager there. I do a lot of different things. Sometimes I deliver garden kits. Other times I work with the city on food policy. A lot of the time I work on, just general programming for Fed that might include just urban gardening and things like that. My background is in restaurants, so there's a reason why I came to this space. I love food. I love local food. I was lucky to work in a lot of different amazing restaurants here locally. So yeah, just a real passion for food, and was lucky enough to land here and be able to make a difference more on the urban agriculture side of things than previously.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, I called it, I mean, it used to be called the food eco. Are we just calling it
Mhm.
Fed now? I'm a director on this, and it's embarrassing that I'm
Yeah,
still referring
we're
to the old name.
we're trying to. I
Yeah.
mean, the food eco district is certainly still a part of what we do.
Yeah.
However, naturally, we've evolved beyond the district. So yeah, it certainly is still food eco district, but yeah, it's trying to change the language to encompass more than just that physical area downtown.
It's
Right.
expanding the district.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making it available for everybody. And I think these concepts cross, they're, yeah, it's a global issue. So,
Mhm.
it's kind of defining it as a district is as bad as us thinking that one country can solve it.
Right.
We're all a part of it, and we all need to be part of the solution, I guess.
Every district
Mhm.
counts.
Yeah. Jill,
Hello.
hello.
Yeah, it's great to hear. It's great to be here and hear more about learn about more what Bread and Butter has been up to as well. I've been seeing, as I've been, going around downtown, I've been seeing more of your programs, and it's just great how you're bringing restaurants together. As Kaylin mentioned, we met many years ago, and I remember the first conversation we had where you said, I'm thinking of starting this fast food chain, and I want it to be sustainable, and that was truly kind of an oxymoron at the time. And I think what's so incredible about Big Wheel is how you were willing to take a chance and break some molds, and that really has set a new standard, I think, across restaurants, and became a first in Canada. And so it was really a very rewarding project for us to be a part of. So thank you for reaching out so many years ago, almost a decade ago now.
Couldn't have done it without you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we sure had to push on the supply chain, right, to get
Yes.
compostable materials that didn't exist and all kinds of things. So it was definitely not easy at the time. But what's cool about that, I think, and what Fed has been a part of, is really trying to go deeper into our food security circularity that we have. We started with, okay, let's make sure that everything in restaurants is compostable. And then, what if we were growing more food in cities and using urban space in a different way? And so it was all these kind of questions that sort of led us to start Fed. And when the pandemic hit, of course, Fed became even more deeply committed to food security and release new programs at that time. So it's been a pleasure to be involved with Fed since the beginning, since inception. And of course, in my day job, I work on carbon accounting and decarbonization, climate action, and I've been doing that for almost 15 years now. So food security and climate are so intrinsically linked. They seem like different areas of focus, but they are really very tied together.
Can I ask you a question about food security? A real basic question, like what is food security and what does that mean on Vancouver Island when we are only growing, maybe 10% maybe of the food we consume? Can you expound on that a little bit for me, just so I've got a nice understanding of what food security is and what it means on Vancouver Island?
That is a great question. And Brianna can likely add to this as well, in just her experience in being involved more with other NGOs throughout Vancouver Island as well. I don't have a magic number per se, but how we think about it is certainly access to food, available food, and security if we were to lose our connection to the mainland, which, we had some scares of recently. So I think, it's certainly being able to produce food on the island, but I think a second piece is making sure there's affordable access to nutritious food here on the island as well. And then there's, another thread that we've started to focus on, which is food security in the long term, which then, begs a question about how will we ensure we can grow food in the long term through having water security, healthy pollinator population, all of those things. So, Fed touches on a number of things, but I think primarily our focus is to help people grow food, and to grow food in areas that are essentially dead spaces at this time.
I've seen that downtown Victoria commercially, and I've seen it in community gardens off the highway in Saanich and a few other places. Are those the kinds of initiatives that you're talking about? Are we talking about everyone having a victory garden in their backyard?
Yeah, I think we just certainly want people to be able to grow food as much as possible, which is why we started the My Fed Farm program to really empower individuals to grow food. And Brianna can share more about what that program has achieved in the last few years, which is really quite incredible. And Brianna's been heading up those programs. But it's not realistic, of course, for everyone to be able to grow food or have access to a yard. And community gardens are so fantastic at filling that void. But we know that community gardens have long wait lists. There's more demand than there is available space. So there's just so much more opportunity for us to create more spaces like that. And I would love for Victoria to be able to say, everyone has an opportunity to grow food in the city if they want to, and has access to healthy food.
Yeah, it kind of feels like even odd spaces like the top of the Empress is being used for bees right now. Is that true, or is that just a rumor I've heard? Are they actually doing bee work on the Empress?
We haven't specifically worked on the Empress. I have done a tour there with their facilities manager. We were specifically looking for other sustainability things, but I do know that the Empress is quite committed to food sustainability through their menu, but also through they have bee colonies at the Empress, which is really a neat initiative, especially for somewhere as as iconic as the Empress, to have bees in their front yard. Like, this is right in the main tourist traffic area, and there's a viewing space, and it's very interactive.
Do they really?
Yep.
When's the last time you were? It's been a while since I've been at the Empress, but I'll have to go check that out. So
Yeah,
that's
you have
right
to
in
check
the.
it out.
That's
It's
right
so
in,
cool.
That's front and center. So
Yeah, if you right in front of the Empress, if you go left, there's a little trail, and it takes you to their beehive colony.
oh wow, that's pretty cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out next time you're downtown.
That is really
I
cool.
love it. Brianna, why don't you go into a little bit about Fed and My Fed Garden, and some of the stuff that Jill touched on with respect to local gardens and growing your own food.
Absolutely. So as Jill mentioned, we right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I say the royal we because I was not heading up this program at the time. However, I did support at a volunteer capacity. At the beginning of the pandemic, everything sort of shut down for all of our programming, and I was like, okay, well, what can we do about this? And the idea was, well, let's get people growing their own food at home, because as Jill mentioned, again, there was issues or concerns around supply chain at that time, like what was going to happen with this pandemic. So the goal was to provide 500 garden kits for local households in the Capital Regional District. And so basically providing everything you would need to start your garden. Mobile planters, soil, seeds, plant starts, and educational resources, as well as some support from the staff here. So that went off the charts.
Must be a lot of dirt.
It's a lot of dirt. I've got some stats I can share with you here, but
do.
Yeah. So basically, that was 2020. It was the appetite was ferocious, and it kept everyone very busy during what would have been a slow time. So 2020 was kind of the height of the program, but in 2021 we were decided, well, there's still a need there. So we continued the program through 2021 and just wrapped up the program for 2022. So we're 3 years into this program, and we've kind of kept the same model. However, we've also created a lot of really cool community partnerships, not going beyond the household to community organizations that are working on food security initiatives or have that direct line to particularly vulnerable populations that are experiencing food insecurity in our region, which there are a number. They're, I think, a little bit invisible to a lot of us, but they are certainly there. So to share with you some really fun stats, to date, My Fed Farm has delivered almost 4,000 planters. So we're just shy of 4,000 planters, which amounts to a potential food growing potential of over 22,000 pounds of food.
Wow.
And that's a low ball. So that's pretty impressive. We've been able to directly connect with over 740 homes in our region.
Wow.
And almost 3,000 people directly being affected by this program.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So cool.
It's worth the effort. And then my favorite, well, maybe not my favorite stat, maybe because it's the biggest one. We've been able to provide almost 100,000 plant starts and seeds through this program to residents in our area. We've partnered with 6 First Nations communities directly.
Oh, wow.
And almost 30 community partnerships as well. So thinking about places like Rainbow Kitchen, Our Place. We've really connected with some new immigrant organizations, like something called Le Relais Francophone, new foundations, and they're working directly with new immigrants and incorporating food security into some of their programming where it wasn't before, and they wouldn't have had that opportunity were it not for My Fed Farm.
Oh, I find that so interesting because there's so many opportunities to kind of connect with people, and I think if you went through a list of people that are food insecure or would need assistance or could benefit from growing their own food, I think there's probably a myriad of organizations that could use some education, some access to tools, and just thinking about trying to provide food security. For sure. I love everything that does, but talk a little bit about the I keep forgetting the name, the greenhouse, like the mobile greenhouse. So talk a little bit about what's going on there.
Sure. So that also kind of came out of the My Fed Farm program. Our fearless leader, Jill, grew our plant starts for the first 2 years of this program. Essentially, we partnered with the city through their Get Growing program. So they definitely supported our ability to be able to provide plant starts for these household populations organizations. However, we found that there was a real opportunity for Fed to have a greenhouse. I think the first year we were lucky enough to borrow a greenhouse from Life Cycles and really found that could be a way to be able to grow some different products or plants rather, that might complement the city. So we fundraised. We were lucky to get a grant from the federal government to support this project. And now we have a mobile greenhouse where we're able to grow, essentially whatever we want. So this might be culturally appropriate foods, which is something that really touches on food security. So when I'm speaking about new immigrant populations, they might not know, what am I supposed to do with this kale? Or that's not something that's really appropriate for my diet. So what we'd like to do more of is consulting with people as they come to this country, and particularly those that are most vulnerable to food security. What do you want to see? Within reason, we're still in the climate we're in. But it really gives us a vehicle to be creative. We can also just bump up our stock by doing it ourselves and saving a lot on funds where we might have had to spend money on plant starts. And then also grow for our pollinator species, our native plants, and things that can help support our food system at ecological level that's beyond just growing food, but supporting the food system as a whole. So we get to have a lot of fun.
Yeah. So you've given away 100,000 plus plants and seeds. What kind of, and I know you just touched a bit about cultural significance about the plants you choose. I'm wondering if there's other criteria like environmental criteria, your calorie per square foot. What other criteria do you use to choose what plants you're going to promote in this program?
I think as best we can, we are somewhat limited by the growing medium. So we are a container garden system, which can limit somewhat what we're able to offer. We're also working with people that might not have any experience in gardening. So basically, we want to keep it really simple and get them hooked, essentially, and provide the sort of quick wins like greens and things that also turn over quickly, so you can get more out of your crop, if you will. But really keeping it simple, and then also keeping in mind, like, we're not going to grow a cauliflower in one of these geotextile bags because it just doesn't work, and we don't want to set people up for failure, because gardening can be challenging anyways.
Right.
So really it is working with our climate. We have an extended growing season, so we can really lean into greens. Tomatoes are great. People really like them as well. They kind of produce a good feeling right away. It feels like it was worth it. And yeah, just being mindful and really trying to be honest and upfront with what is and what isn't appropriate for this sort of style of growing food.
Right. You mentioned kale. I mean, I cannot not grow kale in my yard. It just wants to grow.
It's like
Feels
weeds.
it is. It's the best tasting weeds that there is.
I think it's a good gateway to, or entry point for people to garden. I think there's probably, out of all the people that got these gardens, I imagine many of them maybe had an interest, but not experience. And, once they start, doing it and seeing success and watching things grow, I can imagine that they may do permanent gardens in their backyard if they're able. And I guess this, ties into housing insecurity as well, too. I mean, if you look at, where people live, and it's easy to put a garden in a house that you own, I would imagine, but how do you deal with, insecurity and landlords and, when you're renting? And I mean, it's a bit of a hornet's nest.
Or if you're in a condominium and you only have maybe
Yeah.
a patio or maybe
Well, and
a rooftop.
I know I've got a friend, Steph, who grows on her patio, and she's able to get, a ton, like literally a ton of food. And she loves, almost a big chunk of what she eats comes from her own garden, and it's just on a deck. So I think there is potential, and she's got a green thumb and she knows what she's doing and that kind of stuff. But there is opportunity for sure. One of the things that the Bread and Butter Collective is about is to do with community building, and we interact and with the city just like you do. And you touched on some of the city's input there. I want to ask Jill how the city can do more to promote food sustainability, urban agriculture, and how's the interactions with the city been?
Yeah, that's the city has been, we're very lucky to live here in Victoria and have a great relationship with the city. Brianna's on the urban food table, which, helps us stay connected with what's going on at the city, but also other NGOs and leaders around. It's with My Fed Farm specifically, the city has been a big supporter. They actually, I think this is just the coolest thing. The city converted a big portion of their greenhouse to growing starts to give to organizations like Fed and Life Cycles and others. And we essentially act as a distribution agency. And then we are able to distribute those. But they've converted a greenhouse that was growing, begonias and other things. Begonias? Anyways, I clearly know what starts, but not flowers.
Wrong crowd.
Pretty flowers.
Yeah,
and,
pretty flowers.
A little less of that and a lot of food starts, which is such an incredible program. So the city, Victoria has been very innovative in the last couple of years, I think 3 or 4 years specifically around this, and using some of their own facilities to really help organizations like Fed. Of course, we have a ferocious appetite, no pun intended, for growing food here in the region, I think, and that's so wonderful to see. I think there is a little bit of a fear of rising food costs as well that is driving this. But, programs like the city, they get taken up so quickly, and we still need to do more in our greenhouse, which has been such a fantastic resource for us. And Big Wheel Foundation and Van City were also big supporters of that as well, and making, for us to be able to construct this thing and have this as a legacy piece for all our future programming. So the city has sometimes supported us at times where we didn't have our own infrastructure. And then we were able to, down the road, we're able to, invest in that ourselves and keep growing our growing capacity. There are a few interesting, I think, gaps though in just policy when it comes to food security. So if you really want to make a true food security link, we probably shouldn't be, for example, shipping all of our organic waste out of the region or even off the island for processing. It doesn't really make sense. We should have a closed loop nutrient cycle here where we're growing food, we are consuming food, and the organic waste is going back into that food growing cycle. That's that circularity that I mentioned earlier on. But when you get into the policy behind composting, basically, there are barriers to having small scale, regional, community based composting facilities. And that's getting down to, the ability to have a permit to have a facility like that, regulations around what it costs to insure something like that, no matter how big it is. If it's a backyard system versus a huge industrial commercial, same cost. So there's barriers like that for small entry into really helping us close the loop and have a sustainable food cycle here. So those policy barriers may exist at the municipal, provincial, or even sometimes a federal level. So those are the kind of things that will take a little bit more time to address. But I definitely see that as a gap, and something that we need to figure out here, because it just makes no sense to me from an economics perspective nor a nutrient cycle perspective to be shipping all this.
Well, even climate change, climate action, and I mean that's the other thing. It's you burn emissions, shipping. You ship the food here, now you're shipping the waste back.
Yeah,
and we can use it here.
Yeah,
obviously liaise with farm. I mean, I get the practical sense of, not everybody can have a compost facility. I mean, there's odor, there's rodent issues, there's just general realities of doing that, and we are on an island, so there's a finite amount of land. Is there capacity at Fisher Road facilities? Like there is compost. We, through the, I think it was the Bread and Butter Collective, a number of members went up to the Fisher Road facility just to kind of audit, how the composting works. Because it's one thing to say everything's composted. It's another thing to see, is it actually composted? Because you hear these stories of garbage and recycling being shipped off to Indonesia and just, all this type of horror stories, right? So is there capacity on the island in the commercial composting, or do we need more infrastructure? I imagine the answer is yes to both those, but
yeah, though we're an island, we have a lot of space here. And I mean, if they can do it in, some of these very dense European cities, I think, we should be able to do it here. The technology has come very far in organic processing, where you can have, odorless, closed contained systems now. So I think we need to look at a whole spectrum of infrastructure types to be able to do some small scale, really, producing a very high end product, and then some really large industrial scale where we're also, maybe mixing in chipped yard waste and things like that. But we use a very, generally here on the island, we use a fairly basic rudimentary composting style, windrows and, aeratic static piles. We're getting into some fun composting terms now, but basically piles of dirt that we just move around a bit so that they don't get, too hot and they keep processing. So there's just so many options. And I think that's where I know the city is very keen to have more local composting here. They see that need. So now it's just, working together with the city to figure out how can we close that loop. And how can we also, rethink some of our urban spaces here is the second piece. Brianna and I have done lots of, Google Earth mapping, looking for all the little rooftops and dead spaces in the city. Where can we put some stuff? Where's a missing opportunity here in the city? And, I think there's just lots of opportunities, honestly, in every urban area to really think about how to convert those spaces into something that's really productive for the community and creates perhaps new community hubs too, and places where people can gather.
Yeah, I love that, and it's such an important thing. I know we've got a community garden at Cook Street, and obviously we've worked with Fed to convert it to a pollinator garden, and that's exciting. But it's just a good spot for people to stop and have a coffee and sure, and also educate them a little bit about pollinator gardens and just that end of it. Victoria's got a net zero plan. Like, how feasible is it to become net zero here in Victoria? And how can small businesses do more beyond straw and plastic bag bans and cup charges? And these kind of things frustrate me. As Sam, 2% Jazz and Big Wheel are carbon neutral. It's not onerous, scary at the beginning. It's not that expensive versus not doing it. How can we incentivize and encourage? And, let's talk about how we can make a difference as well with agriculture and composting, but just zero emissions. How can we do that? How can the city help us do that too?
Yeah, this is always a challenge with every municipality. I think, saying we're going to be a net zero community. Well, the city actually has very little control over the emissions that take place. The business community owns most of those emissions. We're talking about transport trucks, we're talking about the business's operations, the downtown buildings. Like, the city doesn't own this infrastructure. So I think what the city can do is really look at those areas of influence. And I always promote a carrot approach versus a stick. The stick raises the bottom up a bit. It's like, okay, don't be completely negligent about this. That's generally what regulating something does. But in Victoria, we have, I feel, a very, very progressive business community. And if there's incentives that say, well, maybe, for example, it could be, you don't have to pay an annual business license fee if you reach this standard, or you get a break on this. If you can figure out how to become carbon neutral, we'll give you a break on these things. But you use your creative capacity and figure it out as a business. We won't tell you exactly how to do that. But I think rewarding performance is something that a city could do, and create more carrots instead of sticks. I really feel like that would drive more action, and it would send a really positive signal to the business community to say, we're in this with you and we're going to give you a break for these things. So that's what I'm usually promoting when I'm engaged in policy level discussions, because for every business, it's different. For a fast food business, it's all about waste. Yeah. It's all about how we can minimize that waste and divert it from landfill. For a retail business, we're really going to be looking at packaging, shipping. You've got a lot of material going in and out, and then you've got a store, which you want to make sure is, heated sustainably and operationally. So every business has a different challenge. And so I think it's really empowering. What cities can do is empower businesses to figure that out and reward performance.
I guess I've had discussions with Lisa Helps in the past about what the city can actually do. And obviously incentivizing is monetary. The city basically collects the taxes and it spends it on the services. So it's not like they have this pocket of, the big budget item is the policing, of course. And it's all done through property taxes, and I get parking to a small degree and things like that. So there's, I think there is an advocacy component though through the province and the feds, and some councillors are better at it than others. So I think that is a pretty important component. What scares me about it is when because I was involved in some of these meetings before, and they're talking about this 30-cent cup fee, and I was and everybody on the call or the Zoom or whatever was feeling the same thing. As like, what are you, like, why? Like, it just seemed a bit crazy to me. And that's something that's within the city's bylaw purview, I guess. They can actually do this, but it freaks me out because I'm like, why not just incentivize people to become carbon neutral? Or if these businesses are going to collect this 30 cents, sure. If everybody wants to give me 30 cents, offset my costs, great. But what am I doing with that? Right? Like, do it, and if you do collect the 30 cents, then you have to lead to carbon neutrality. Right? Like, wouldn't that be a thing that the city could kind of control that could lead to actual real change versus just enriching? I don't want to say enriching because there's no hospitality businesses that are rich, but like, it's just like carbon taxes. The same thing in my mind is, okay, well, it's just returns back to the people. It's like, well, what the hell? Like, taxing, is sort of a penalty that doesn't, it's like the slow, long haul. Sure, if things become more expensive, maybe you're going to do less of it. But I think incentivizing, just like you said, the carrot is way more important to me.
Is it maybe just to trigger people's their mindset so they start thinking about it in a different way?
Well, I think we're beyond starting to think about it. That's the problem. Is like it's like we need actual really simple thing. Like it's so to me, it's very simple because we've done it. Like it's we live it and we know it's easy. But do you think it's practical that they use the carrot and stick approach for like using this whatever the 20 cent or 30 cent cup fee that they're most because they consult and everybody that consulted with said it's a bad idea, and then I hear, oh, we're gonna go forward with this, and I'm like, okay, so you just consulted for no reason at all, just to check that box, which I think is a frustration with municipal politics, I guess. I don't want to just lay it on City of Victoria's feet, but like if you're going to consult, listen to the people you consulted, but pivot it maybe. And I think if you're going to do it, say you can only collect it if you're doing this. And I think that would be a way more, you're going to get, imagine if you converted 100 more businesses to become carbon neutral in our city. Like that, I mean, I think of the emissions that we've saved since the beginning.
So,
I mean,
so
it's
maybe
huge.
if they're consulting and they're not hearing what the answers are coming back, maybe they're asking the wrong questions.
I don't think they're asking the wrong questions. Honestly,
No?
I think that they've got boxes to tick, and the institution itself has an idea of where they want to go, and their tools are minimal, right? And they're not making the connection between the carrot and the stick, and what are you going to actually be doing? I think I don't know. What do you think, Jill? And then Brianna, I want to get your
About some
opinion as well.
expert opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do super well with the with the pace, I guess, of policy to change. I do think it's a fundamental thread that we need. But what I've seen happen is businesses will demonstrate something's possible. New businesses will come up and say, here's a new way of doing things. And then policy gets wrapped around that. So I tend to focus on that. Let's prove what's possible and work with the most creative, bold businesses to break those molds. And then policy will generally follow. In the issue of waste management, I sort of go back to the fundamentals again. It's like, well, A, let's have good waste management here. Let's not lose these as resources. But B, let's make sure it's possible for a consumer or tourist walking around the city to manage their waste properly. We have mostly just garbage receptacles everywhere. And then over here, we have these policies that are very advanced. Well, the fundamentals of just being able to manage waste in the downtown is still broken. Most commercial office spaces aren't required to even have proper recycling or to have composting. So some really basic stuff that I think we can move the needle on a little faster. You may have seen the tri-bin system that actually has a composting stream and a proper recycling stream that is accessible to diverters if they want to collect the cans out of. Those are great, but it's a pilot project still, and there's just a few scattered around the city, essentially. I think there's about 25.
Yeah, there's some
We
in
need
Country
that
Village.
en masse,
Yeah.
So I tend to be back to basics with policies and look at what's the lowest hanging fruit that's going to get us the furthest when it comes to zero waste. Let's do that first.
100%. Brianna, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I would echo what Jill said. As just a consumer, I'm always so happy to be outside Big Wheel Burger on Cook Street, and there is a proper waste diversion. And I always just kind of go back to why are these not everywhere? Or I just moved down to Cook Street Village, and I hear the City of Victoria, the small garbage truck come by to this one garbage can that's outside of just beside a bus stop, and it is probably there a couple times a day. Honestly, it seems like it's always there, just getting rid of waste. And then on the back, it's zero waste, which makes me feel they're doing something about diverting this in some way, but no. So as for me, I'm very much with Jill. I'm why can I not just have access to a properly diverted waste stream right off the get-go? And then again, in terms of policy, things move slowly and it's like a bit behind the wheel. Like I was in some of those Zoom meetings, Kaylin, just for interest, and the arguments were very clear and very, very much supported by the business community. So it's, yeah, I can sort of see your frustration. I was like, why are we going down bit? Like, I thought people started adding like a sort of a 25% cup or 25-cent cup thing ages ago. Like,
Yeah.
why is this now going to be a bylaw?
Yeah.
Like, can we not skip ahead a little bit? So, yeah, for both of you, I just sort of think I get it. I don't have anything more to add than other than like, yeah, it just moves slow. And I think there's some really basic things that can be done.
Well, I think one of the original ideas around Fed and when it was the food eco district was try to set an example of how a district or an area of people can make a difference. And mind you, it wasn't as successful as we had hoped, and there's things that got in the way of us, realizing the dream of creating a district that was entirely carbon neutral. But I still think that, and we're now talking almost 10 years later. So it's like, okay, like we've, Big Will's been carbon neutral for, most of those 10 years. 2% Jazz, other members of Bread and Butter Collective. There's people that, we're leading the pack, but we're talking 10 years. Like if you look at the average life being 76 years or 80 years or whatever, it's like that's a big chunk of our existence on this planet. And we're still talking about it, and climate is still, or even, getting worse, but there's really simple things they're not doing. And it frustrates the heck out of me. I know I was tweeting at Gerald Butts, who's Trudeau's sort of like consultant or right-hand guy or whatever. And he blocked me for suggesting, some of these things. Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And again, it just doesn't, I'm like, you're blocking me? Like, it shocks me, right? Because, I think I was talking about the coal that we export to China or something, and then talking about composting or whatever, and they just get blocked. And it doesn't matter, whatever, but it speaks to the whatever the agenda is or whatever, and maybe the city feels limited with what tools they can maneuver. This stuff does take some creativity, which is insane to me because there's not a lot of creativity to become carbon neutral. It's really simple.
It seems
right?
really basic.
Yeah,
right?
and why can't we support businesses that are trying to help others become green? Like why are you focusing on this? Even doing an ad campaign would be beneficial, and introducing ways to become green. When you think like, help me, like.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Brianna's comment about why aren't we skipping ahead is a good one. We're penalizing an activity on behalf of the consumer, and okay, that's one way to go about it. But what I've found really inspiring is VI reusables, the bread and butter system, sharewares in Vancouver. Like, let's skip the whole waste equation, period.
Yeah.
And NULA as well,
Yeah.
and let's just create reusable systems in our city and make that a whole little ecosystem of material flow that again is circular and is here and localized. Let's skip the waste entirely. And what's exciting actually is just last week or the week before, the Clean BC Plastics Action Fund was announced. And the Synergy Foundation is supporting the administration of this $10 million fund with the province. And there is a stream in there about, waste reuse and waste elimination and creative ways to address plastic waste. So I hope that maybe through this podcast, more people will hear about that program and apply for some of that funding to do programs like this, because, I think the province's Clean BC Plastics Action Fund program is exactly sort of trying to target what we're talking about here and targeting that circularity. So, let's skip ahead and let's focus on just completely new ways of doing things, because you're right, we don't really have the time. We need to be leapfrogging rather than taking the slow progression piece.
Yeah, and I don't know, to me it just insults my intelligence a little bit. And, it's, yeah, I mean, we can talk all day long about that struggles with government and the powers and whatever. But it's encouraging that there is a program that maybe can be used as a base model to try to move into other areas, whether it be urban agriculture or whatever, to try to promote funding and incentivizing people for doing things. But I agree, let's promote this stuff, and if people can access the funds and make a difference, then let's speed it up, because we're going too slow, but we're skipping all the really good fun stuff. Like, I find this stuff super interesting myself, like urban agriculture. I know Topsoil is a business that is doing urban agriculture, and you guys, they've helped fed a lot, and I know you work with them too, Jill, and I just find that so cool. They literally are growing. Like, we had a topsoil salad last year that was just used with greens that were grown locally. And obviously we shop local with local farms and stuff like that, but why not expand that agriculture? And I think the restaurants in particular need to be supporting local farms as well, because it's all about, if the farms don't survive, then, food security is at risk.
And we need that to expand, because I know when I was trying to buy local greens, I couldn't. There wasn't enough to go.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
everybody
I
used,
couldn't buy them.
Yeah.
Which kind of surprised me. Kind of was a happy thing. I mean, they're popular and people are buying them and using them, but we just need that much more.
Well, and we have the land, and I mean, we have the capabilities of doing it, and the intent and whatnot.
In terms of composting, I'm a big composter at home. I love composting. I in my industry, the coffee industry, a lot of what I can do can be composted, from my cups to my paper filters to coffee. It all goes to composting. And when you said that some of our composting is not staying on the island, where is it going? I mean, as a collective, we did go up to Cobble Hill and we saw the composting facility up there, and I felt so good about what I was doing in Victoria now, because I see it being composted up there. But if you're saying that's not all, maybe you can expound on that a bit for me.
Well, Vancouver Island as a whole, and different municipal contracts and even just commercial contracts are always changing. So it's a bit of a moving target. It depends on who has the contract, where their facility is, etc. I think we've done a better job at making sure the facilities on the island are being actually used. Like you mentioned, the Cobble Hill facility, which is great. But there are times where, certain municipalities, or especially commercial contracts, where it is going, on a barge and going off island, or simply capacity or maintenance at a facility. There may need to be backups. But so it does happen time to time. We've done different checkpoints, trying to follow the thread of where compost is going when we're doing, say, a greenhouse gas emissions audit for a certain business. And at different times, we'll find it's actually going down to sometimes even the States, versus, okay, now it's back on the island. And it's just due to these waste management contracts, and the upstream supply chain is constantly changing. It's kind of the same thing in the recycling world. We don't necessarily always have, we definitely don't have enough recycling facilities here in BC to process our waste. Mm-hmm. So that's why Clean BC Plastics Action Fund was started, was to actually have waste processing here for plastics and things, so we can have our own circular plastics economy. And that was actually triggered, for us, the focus on circularity was triggered when China essentially said, we don't want your waste anymore. And, we had to flounder here in Canada to figure out, what do we do with all of this? We have been closing facilities to do proper recycling here in Canada for the last decades. Now we have to reinvest in it. So we lost this resource due to the economies. And now we are rebuilding it. But I do think that at the end of the day, that's a positive for Canada. Sorry, I'm going on a real rant here.
No, I like it. Yeah.
But
rant away. I rant every day.
But it's such an opportunity. I mean, if we have to deal with our own waste, now we can think about it differently. And what can we produce with that?
Yeah.
You know, let's create jobs here with that. Let's create new businesses. And that's really exciting for us. And that's why we started the Project Zero Incubator program is, all right, let's think outside the box here. And we've got so many cool businesses in that program and so many opportunities. So, you know, when it comes to the future for like urban agriculture and circular economy, if you have an entrepreneurial thread at all, like it's just a world of opportunity, and it's so needed. So I think it's going to be a really exciting next 10 years.
It kind of feels like when China closed that door, it really opened up a lot of other doors, because we can't really understand the amount of waste that we ship away until we actually own that waste and have to deal with it. Once it's off of our shores,
Well, I guess it's
we tend
owning
to
the
forget about it,
responsibility,
right? Yeah,
right? It's really easy just to ship stuff away and not even think about it. But
and then we just use more.
Yeah.
Because it never builds up in our backyard.
yeah, exactly. It builds up in your backyard. Maybe you change your behaviors a little bit. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's
I
interesting.
Hope so.
Brianna, so Fed, from what I understand, just got charity status. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and give us some closing remarks? What you would like our listeners or viewers to know or do, or how can we make a difference?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, we did get charity status as of the end of June, which was a long time coming. I got to take the baton over the over the finish line, but I know for members of the board and staff, this was a big time work project. And so yes, feeling very thankful for that. It opens up a lot of doors for Fed in just capacity building. What we'd love to see more of is food growing in these underutilized spaces, much like, always using topsoil as this sort of crowning example of what can be done in a city. And yes, we are very lucky to live in an area that is close to a rural setting as well. So there's a ton of great farms out there, but nothing like having it sort of in your face like it is with topsoil, and just a really beautiful example of what growing food can be. So we have goals to maybe kind of look more into that and how Fed might support more of this underutilized land food production pairings in our region. Continuing on with the food security lens of the MyFed Farm program. And also just our educational component. We haven't really talked too much about the urban learning garden or the Blanchard edible streetscape, but that's something that we would like to continue to do. Placemaking is
and that's
part
at
of what we do.
Victoria Downtown Public Library?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's, again, an underutilized space. Like case in point, it's a massive brick building that has all this sort of monochrome color to it. And we threw a bunch of planters and plants in there and some educational pieces. So just really hoping to connect people with food. That's a big goal for Fed, alongside growing it, of course. And then the restaurant community, really hoping to reconnect and engage through bread and butter, through our network, and support restaurants too in their goals about food sustainability and just general environmental concerns, as you've mentioned with carbon neutrality. So for Fed, you can support us through volunteering with us. We are still running our MyFed Farm crowdfunding campaign. Our program is sort of wrapping up. However, we are still providing supports to our new growers through monthly memos and just contact with them to just support them. We also have partnered with the city on their fall seedling distribution. So we will be touching base with our partners. And we do still need some funding for that program. So if you visit our website, you can contribute to our crowdfunding campaign. $120, price of a nice meal out, will provide a garden kit for a family for years to come. So that would be where our efforts are now. And we'll be looking to 2023 with some big hefty goals.
That's awesome. Just to give a bit of background, like for private foundations, charity status is huge because we can't donate money. We can, but very smaller amount of our budget can go to non-charity status organizations.
Okay.
So we were donating through Life Cycles to Fed, through Fed, because they have a charity status. So now Fed can get direct funding from Big Wheel Foundation to help with these initiatives, which are super important. So that is another component to the value of having charity status.
Can the two of you maybe address this? I did want to bring it up in our conversation today. I didn't find the chance. Maybe this is it. What's the difference between a charitable organization and a B Corp?
Oh,
Yeah,
Or I mean, I'm sure there's a huge. I mean, I'm sure there's a huge difference, but I was
Sam.
thinking about. Well, I don't know, and I'm sure if
This is
I
going to
don't
be a
know.
3-hour podcast.
Okay, good. I mean, sorry to ruin your day.
Watch.
I think I can.
Yeah, Jill.
You go ahead, Kaylin.
No. You go, Jill, and then provide your closing remarks.
I've obviously asked the right
Yeah,
question.
you've
And
asked
I
the
got
right
the best reaction ever.
So, the sort of social enterprise, we'll say, status thing is a bit of a spectrum, but you have some distinct organization types. So on the corporate side, a business can become a B Corp, which is essentially a certification for governance, social, environmental initiatives. So it is a certification. But one amendment you have to make that is legal is you have to change your articles of incorporation if you're a B Corp in Canada to say that you do have the ability to prioritize social and environmental values over profits, because it's actually you can be liable for not doing the profitable thing, even if it's detrimental to social environmental impact in traditional corporation. So B corporation is or a B Corp, it has that legal change and is certified to their actions and their policies, but it is still a business. You cannot become a B Corp as a nonprofit or a charity. So and of course there's a traditional nonprofit status, like a nonprofit society, but if you have charitable status, which is sort of a level beyond simple nonprofit status, you can issue tax receipts for your donations. So you really have to make sure that your activities exactly match your purposes and that you're a solely mission-driven organization as a charity. So 3 different legal entities, but being a B Corp is sort of as close as you can get to being a nonprofit or charity as a legal business.
Are there benefits to the business to become a B Corp? Like, are there tax incentives? I have no idea.
There's no real tax incentive to do it. It's really like the mission of the business. For example, if I went through the B Corp because we were considering becoming a B Corp,
right?
And we fit all the criteria, and we actually, because of our foundation and involvement with that, we now would be a slam dunk B Corp. So we could actually do it. Your organization would probably be a B Corp as well, as far as what you're actually doing in your business.
Okay.
And it encompasses, fair wages and your social and community involvement and all those types of things. Where it distinguishes, and Jill mentioned it, was you've got to change your articles. So if you sell that business, the articles are B Corp. So you're carrying on that mission.
Okay.
So there's many, I think the original people that started B Corp, I can't remember the name of the company that they had, but they sold their company, I believe, they did sell their company, but they then invested the money they did in creating this B Corp structure. So they ran their company like a B Corp, but there was no certification. There's nothing. So when they sold their company, the new owners kind of did what they wanted to do. So that spurred them to create this B Corp sort of infrastructure. And it's growing fast. There's a ton of B Corps out there now.
So it kind of adds some permanency to the corporation. Its mission, at least.
The peanut butter company here, Fatso, is a B Corp.
Oh.
So we're going to actually have Jill from Fatso on our podcast on the 29th. That's when we'll be recording it. So we'll talk to her a little bit more about B Corp.
I'll save all my B Corp questions for then.
No, that was good. You really did that. Jill, closing remarks. What would you like to leave our listeners with?
Well, I think there's a lot of daunting issues, with food security and climate change and all the things that we've talked about today. But I'd say, start small. Every business, every household, all those small initiatives really add up. Just like, Big Wheel, we focused on the straws, and then we focused on, what kind of fridges to buy, and all those small things have made, Big Wheel an award-winning, mold-breaking initiative, but it wasn't overnight. So
that's
I would
very
just
true.
say
Yeah.
start small and keep building.
Yeah. I love it. Excellent. Well, thanks, ladies, for your time and all the info. I think it's super valuable. And as we move through these strange times, all this information is super, super valuable.
Yeah, there's some great information there. Thanks, you guys. I feel like I want to go put my hands in the dirt and compost everything.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being
Bye,
here.
Brianna.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. You know,
So, yeah, that
I'm
was
only kind of
amazing.
kidding when I say I want to put my
Well,
hands
you
in the
do
dirt.
garden.
I actually
I'm an
do.
aspiring gardener. I want a garden,
Yeah,
right? I'd like to garden.
You know
What's
what
up, man?
I do at my cafe? Sometimes I'll just go through the garbage and I'll separate it because customers don't, even though we have some clear distinctions.
Yeah.
And I don't mind getting my hands dirty,
Yeah.
going through and just making sure everything's sorted.
Well, it's being
right.
true to your
Feels-
initiative too, right? Like I think a lot of this stuff, if I look back through my life, was I always an environmental guy, or did I care? Did I recycle, or I'd say no. But once you get exposed to what's possible, then that's the beginning. So somebody could be listening to our podcast who doesn't even think about composting, can just see the benefit of it and then go, oh, let me try this. That's really what I think the goal of all this stuff is information sharing, access to the tools to be able to implement some of these things, and then just going and doing it and letting the world go. When we started the Big Wheel Burger, carbon neutrality was our focus, and now we have a community foundation.
Right.
So who knows where it's going to take us. And now I find, my interest is in advocating with the city and the province and the feds to try to do something meaningful when it comes to this kind of stuff without, the virtue signal of buy an electric vehicle or whatever, which is in itself an environmental bomb because of how carbon intensive it is at the beginning, which once those emissions are in the air, they don't come out. Right. So, technology will hopefully save us in the future with, carbon capture and things like that, or nuclear, which we've already discovered.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of great future options coming, I think.
Yeah.
From
Innovation.
the very small. I
Totally.
think when it comes to plastics and food security, I think we should be looking at microbes.
Yeah. Well,
And
100%.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Looking forward to our next podcast next Monday. And we've got some exciting ones coming up.
Yeah, thanks to our guests today. That was
they were
really great.
fantastic.
That was so fun to have them here and got me thinking for sure.
And we'll do follow-ups with them and seeing where it goes. And, it's one thing to talk about issues, another thing to see what the result of some of these efforts are. So hopefully we can see some change in our community. And we've got upcoming municipal elections, and we're hoping to have some councillors on talking about their vision of our community. So I think, let's just keep on being safe, being happy, and be kind.
Yeah, well, you be real nice to everybody there,
I'm
Kaylin.
going to try.
You'll do a great job.
Thanks,
Take care,
Sam.
man. Have
Talk
a great
to you
one.
next week. Cheers.
Thanks, Kyle.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, 900 Degrees Wood-Fired Pizzeria, Agrius, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Brentwood Bay Village Emporium, Nourish and Charlotte the Quail, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Hoyne Brewing, Jetty Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Rain Dogs, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, Taco Stand Al Pastor, Toque, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.